Next up, we're going over to Jack Stone. Jack's got 8 top tips for us. So, as a 35-year member with 13 quarter-table qualifications, he's attended every annual meeting bar one since 1994. He's continued to attend even since retirement and still loves and benefits from the buzz and interaction with like-minded people from all over the world. For many years, he's one of around a dozen speakers on Allied Dunbar's masterclass programme, speaking to their agents all over the UK. And he's spoken for MDRT in Brisbane, Bratislava, Jerusalem, and for Prudential and IFPAS in Singapore 4 or 5 times. He's sold his business twice and now does mentoring. So Jack, over to you, and let me know when you want me to share the slides.
Thank you, Carla, for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here, and I'm glad everyone's keeping safe and well in this crisis, and well done to England for last night. I love MDRT and have benefited so much over the years from what it offers us. My first actual experience of it was after about 8 or 9 months at then Hambro Life, when a trainer came from head office to teach us how to sell. He played some audio clips from an MDRT tape called The Broad Concept, MDRT 1979, Dave Greenstone, which changed the way I asked questions and taught me to sell the problem, not the solution. To me, this was the holy grail, and I thought if I asked my questions like that, I could not fail. I listened to this over and over and over in the car and at home, so much so that my then 7-year-old son, when he heard me going on the phone to make appointments with prospects, would mimic me by saying, "Oh, here he goes again. What do you want for your wife and children if you die tonight?" I'm certain this tape and the questioning technique was an absolute huge part in my future modest success in this profession. Actually attending LIA meetings and subsequently MDRT meetings since 1994 and hearing really successful agents share their ideas and skills added layers and layers and layers of confidence to my own and led to constant improvements in my performance. I listened to and met and chatted with giants in our industry, including our own Tony Gordon, who's here today, and I've previously thanked Tony personally for all the wonderful ideas he shared, which helped me tremendously over the years. Thank you once again, Tony. You may have heard some of today's ideas before if you've attended meetings or read them in Round the Table magazine, because that's one of the wonders of MDRT. We get to hear everyone else's best ideas at work, and we can pick and choose the ones which suit us best. I'm sure you will have heard Tony telling us about filling his diary before they left the office on a Friday to make sure he had the right activity levels. Well, here's my own original mantra take on this. A full diary lets you sell with professional indifference. If you had a queue of people waiting at your office to be advised, you would have them line up. You would say, this is what you have to do. Yes, no, next. I'm going to go, 60% of my business was protection, or over 60%. I'm going to go through some ideas now. If I say Mr. Prospect or he or she, please don't be upset. I'm not being sexist. Easy second sale. Your clients have taken action on protection. Once you've been through the process and obtained the underwriting decision, before issuing the policy, ask the underwriters, based on the medical and financial evidence you already have, and with no further forms or tests, how much more cover could this client have at this time? Then go to the client and tell them, I've got 2 bits of very good news for you. Firstly, your application has been accepted on first-class terms. For someone who's rated, you've first-class terms for someone with your medical history. So we can put you on risk straight away, Mr. Client. But secondly, I've spoken to the chief underwriter who's told me that without any further medicals, tests or forms, you would be allowed to have a further X 100,000 cover right now. Don't you think it would make sense to do this now while you know you can get the cover? Half or 60% of my clients said yes to this, and even if they didn't take up the whole additional amount, they would sometimes take up part of it. Have you ever had the objection, my wife will remarry? Well, there's a joke answer. where you say to the client, well, I haven't met your wife yet, but would you remarry her? Now, what you would say to him, my wife will remarry. That's good. Who do you have in mind? Do I know him? I'd like to meet him and have him as a client right now, if he can afford to take on a widow and 3 children. Should we marry her off in advance, or should we give her a choice? Money machine, Mr. Client, if you owned a money machine where you pulled the handle and it produced £10,000 every month, would you take out a breakdown or maintenance contract? Would you have it insured for its full replacement value? You're that money machine. How much are you worth? You're earning 120,000 a year. You're age 35. So if you never get another pay rise and there's no inflation, you'll earn 3,600,000 by the time you're 65. If you had any other asset worth that much, would you insure it? Fully comprehensive. Breakdown. Don't you think it makes some sense to insure your money machine in case it breaks down? Once I had a client who was looking to readjust his outgoings generally, and when I mentioned his policy, he said to me, no, you can't touch that, that's my money machine. Pregnant pause in a meeting. You've met your prospect and you've covered your introductions, and he's wondering why he's even seeing you, and you're wondering how to launch into your normal presentation. So you need an attention grabber. Talk about the magic of compound interest. Einstein said it was the 8th wonder of the world. Ask the prospect, Mr. Prospect, if you put £1 in an account and its value doubled every year, what would it be worth in 20 years' time? Has anybody here got the answer today? He'll tell you £10,000, £50,000, £100,000. No, Mr. Prospect, the answer is 1,048,000. Now, if the growth each year was taxed at 20%, how much would you now have after 20 years? Well, I don't know, 400,000, 500,000? No, it's actually 127,500. And at 40% tax, as we have here in the UK, the answer is 12,100. Now, the client won't jump up and down, eager to buy from you, where do I sign? But he will think, this is interesting. I'll see what else he has to say. And you can follow up with, why don't you let me look at how we can make your money work better for you and find you any possible tax shelters. Business owner who's got a relative working for him, why don't you ask, would you continue your brother's, son's, daughter's salary if he or she became disabled or was off for an extended period? The usual answer is, of course I would. For how long? Well, for as long as it takes. To which you reply, how would you like to transfer that liability to an insurance company after the first 90 or 180 days? Instead of talking about life assurance, ask the client, why don't we set up a trust? Mr. Client, what percentage of your children's education do you plan to pay for? Well, all of it. How much will that come to over the next 15 years? Well, I don't know, 300,000, maybe more. Who will pay it if you die or take seriously ill? Why don't we set up a trust? We can get one of the large financial institutions to put the money in a trust to deal with this, and all you have to do is pay a nominal servicing fee each year. Miracle of life assurance. After chatting at an annual meeting with the late legendary Mehdi Fakhrizadeh, he told me life assurance is a miracle. I created the following powerful thought to close a sale. You've discussed what you're going to do. You've discussed your recommendations. Mr. Client, you have to deliver it in the right tone. It's not to be jovial or jokey. Mr. Client, let me tell you about the miracle of life assurance. Once we put this in place now, if anything happens to you, you'll be able to reach back from the grave and pay all the bills. You'll be able to reach back from the grave and pay all the school fees. You'll be able to reach back from the grave and keep the business alive. I actually used it once in an investment case where they were investing for grandchildren's school fees, and we discussed 200,000 being invested, and having gone through the whole scenario with them, let's go ahead, how much are we putting in? Let's do 40,000. And I said to the wife, June, what we're doing today is a miracle. Because after you and Douglas are long gone, you'll be able to reach back from the grave and pay your grandchildren's school fees. And she looked at him and smiled, and he looked at her and said, let's just do the whole 200,000, because they wanted to create a miracle. Screen share, if you would, Carla. The domino effect. To demonstrate the loss of a breadwinner, draw or have pre-drawn a set of dominoes, 6 or 8 dominoes lined up. Put his name and current earnings in the first one, and above the others put mortgage, pension, kids' education, car loans, business personal guarantees, household expenses, taxes due, etc., all his commitments. Then ask, what do you think would happen to the other dominoes if the first one, you, falls due to illness or death? He'll realize immediately without being told, and you're well on the way to your protection sale. Tell the client, my job is to provide super glue to make sure that the first domino will not fall through illness or death. That way, all the others will not fall either. All we need to do is decide how much glue is needed. Screen share, if you would. By the way, this was an idea that came from Brian Ashett, I think my very first meeting for inheritance tax. Excuse me. By the way, Mr. Client, how will they pay the tax? Well, I would have thought that an estate of over £2 million wouldn't have any problem in paying 450,000 in tax. Well, let's examine how they could pay it, because there are only 4 ways available to pay the tax. One is they can use the cash. 2, they can sell assets. 3, they could borrow the money. And 4, life assurance. And then you go through the actual costs each year. If they use the cash, they have to give up 446,000 immediately, and they lose the income forever of 11,000 a year. So on with selling the assets, borrowing the money, and the life assurance at 7,000. And the key question is, Mr. and Mrs. Client, if you had both died last night and all 4 options were still available today, which would be the best option for your family to take today to pay the tax? Well, obviously the life assurance. Well, of course, you can't get life assurance after you die. So let's put it in place now while you're still here. I had one client who looked at this and he paused and he pondered, and he said, well, I guess they'd have to sell the assets. And I said, that's interesting. Nobody's ever said that to me before. Why do you say that? He said, well, with my health record, I might not get the life assurance. It was sold already. Thank you, Carla. Don't forget to prospect close to home, nearest and dearest. When I joined this profession, I was told to prepare a list of names to contact as prospect. Not yet. My friends and family should be on the list too. Perhaps like you, I was reluctant to include people close to me who I cared about, because I didn't want to upset my special relationship. So I scoured around to find strangers who would buy my message, my service, my products. And even as I became more successful, I continued to look for new people to fit my profile, client profile, and not contacting those closest to me, and began to realize that this didn't make sense. If you were a physician with the only cure to prevent a dreaded epidemic like COVID, Would you run around looking for strangers to offer this to, or would you go first to your nearest and dearest and make sure they had the cure? In these three cases, I'm thankful I overcame my reluctance. First, my childhood friend, since boyhood, was made redundant 20 years ago from his job with an insurance company, no less, and he lost all his company benefits. I helped him set up his own business and made sure he had critical illness insurance. And just a few years later, when he needed heart bypass surgery, his critical illness insurance paid £400,000. This helped the new business during his absence and gave him money to ease financial worries. This same friend's son, I've known the friend's son since his birth, and the son and his wife became my clients as well. About 5 years ago, the son's wife had a stroke as a result of a rare blood disorder. She thankfully recovered, and her critical illness paid over £300,000. The money allowed the couple to pay off a business loan and invest money for their 7-year-old daughter's education and future. In December 2016, the third case, while I was actually in Chicago at a foundation grant awards meeting, I received this text message from a client, which I'll read verbatim. I cannot tell you how happy I am to have that policy for Nicola. And how much I love you for making me do the right thing. The thought of having it would have me very worried right now. Instead, we're already looking into a full-time nanny, which we can afford thanks to the policy. I've told my two closest friends to make sure they have cover. This client is my own son. His wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. Unfortunately, she discovered it very early, and it seems her treatment has been 100% successful. But you can see what the £500,000 policy proceeds meant to them in the recovery process. This is what we do. We keep dreams alive. We save families from worry or disaster. We keep businesses going. We deal with school fees or nanny costs. We deliver tax-free money where none existed before. That's the miracle of life assurance. Don't forget to prospect those who are close to you. And if you don't, could you ever justify to yourself or to your loved ones why you hadn't looked after them properly? Thank you very much for this rush through. I hope there's something there you can use, and have a great second half to the year.